Today we'll look at the social consequences of certain Sikh beliefs. Then what are the kind of dynamics within the religion? We'll see what is the role of the guru and the disciple. Then we'll have a look at the why the recitation of the name is considered so important. And then also, if we get time, we'll take a look at certain ceremonies or life ceremonies of Sikhism. So, first and foremost, when we speak about these social consequences, we see that these have led to significant changes in the social structure, practices, and relationships. So, in a way, it has had an influence on the community, which has then had an impact on how they have structured their society, what are the practices, as well as their relationships with others. Now, one of the most notable kind of consequence is the separation from Hinduism. Okay, particularly from the Hindu social system, and also we see that this has in a way reshaped the social and cultural dynamics. So, one of the most important consequence when we speak about separating from Hinduism, what comes to our mind? Okay, so one of the main things is they don't follow the concept of having many deities. But when it comes to the social consequences, caste system, okay, so one of the primary ones is breaking away from Hindu traditions and their social practices as we have already seen. Also, they don't worship multiple deities, okay, and in a way also they practice monotheism. So in a way this is kind of a separation from Hinduism. Now the central focus of Sikh worship is what? Guru Granth Sahib. So that is their primary focus of their worship. And what happens is, this also, we see that Sikhism excludes the need for ritual purification and also pilgrimages to having going to the Ganges, taking a dip over there for purification. So in a way Sikhism excludes the need for such ritual purification or pilgrimages or yatras, etc. Now these are very much integral for Hindu traditions. Now we see that the rejection of these practices was a key to establish Sikh identity as different from or separate from Hinduism. And next we come to the absence of a priesthood. Now when we saw in Jainism, why was this significant? Okay, so in a way, in Jainism we saw that anybody could have a contact with the divine. What was the whole problem during those days when it came to the Hindu traditions? When it came to performing rituals, so you had the caste system which was very rigid. Then also you had certain rituals, or you had rituals which could be performed only by a certain class, right? The Brahmins. Now here we see that when it comes to worship, when it comes to establishing a contact with the divine, Sikh also in a way, they don't have a priesthood in the sense of how the Hinduism would have Brahmins. Okay, so here the idea of an intermediary between God and individual is rejected. So in the sense, you don't require one particular person to act as a bridge between you and God. You yourself can establish a contact with the divine. You don't need there is no need of a priest in order to help you to go and have a contact with the divine. So this was one of the primary ideas, and as we have already seen in the other religions also, why, since this kind of a privilege was vested with only a few people, it was in a way becoming difficult for the people to follow certain rituals. Now we see that each Sikh is entitled to read plus interpret the Guru Granth Sahib. So anybody can read, anybody can interpret it, and therefore you don't require somebody to do it for you. And therefore we see that this knowledge is available to all, irrespective of your class, irrespective of your caste in the community. And therefore we see that this is in contrast with Hinduism, where you had the Brahman caste who used to hold the authority to conduct rituals, to teach the scriptures, and to act as spiritual leaders. So in a way we see that Sikhism breaks away from this aspect of having a intermediary or a bridge between God and the person. Now, by allowing each person in a way to read the scriptures, it rejects this concept of priesthood, and therefore it also promotes equality. And therefore we see that this kind of approach was very important to, in a way, put an end to the caste system, which was very much prevalent during those times. So we see that the caste system was very rigid, okay, in Hinduism, and therefore we see that this egalitarian approach, this equality approach, played a very important role in undermining the rigid caste structures that were ingrained in the Hindu society. Now the next one is the whole concept of the community kitchen, that is the Guru Ka Langar. So what is commensality? This means eating together. So this was another important feature of Sikhism. And why is it so? What was promoted by this practice? Equality, right? So anybody, irrespective of the caste, gender, could come together and have a meal. So as you can see here, you have people of various this thing. You have men, you have women, you have children, all of them are there, and then you have these people going and serving them. Now, the langar ensures that Sikhs, irrespective of any class, caste or gender, sit together and share a meal. So irrespective of any distinctions, they share a meal. And therefore this symbolizes breaking of social barriers and also promotes the idea of brotherhood. Or you can say promotes the idea of unity among the Sikhs. We see that in the traditional Hindu society, eating together was often restricted to the caste. So you had, in a way, the upper caste would refuse to eat with the lower caste or the untouchables. And therefore we see that this insistence on the langar was kind of a challenge to the prevalent norms at that time. Okay, so at least within the Sikh community, it was an attempt to abolish this kind of barriers, abolish this kind of distinctions. And therefore, by emphasizing the importance of the community, so with this, you also have the importance of community and the notion of shared responsibility. Okay, and in a way, this was in contrast to Hinduism. Now we see that though in principle Sikhism rejects the Hindu caste system, we see that there are still some caste distinctions within the Sikh community. Okay, so though in principle it is not supposed to be there, but we see that here and there, of course, humans being human, there will always be these kind of distinctions, these kind of divisions here and there. So now, let us see what are the kind of divisions that are there within the community. So we see that over time, the Sikh society was evolved into three broad categories. So first you have the Jats. So these are basically the agricultural tribes, or those who mainly were involved in agricultural production. Then you have the non-Jats. Jats. Now this includes Brahmans, Kshatriyas and Vaisyas from the Hindu social system. And then you have the Mazahabis, who are in a way the converts from the untouchable caste. Okay, so we see that the Jats, though these are considered as low in the Hindu caste hierarchy, but we see that in the Sikh community, they have emerged as a very important or a preeminent group. So, as they are an agricultural community, we see that these Jats have had economic power, and in a way they have dominated the rural Sikh life. So since the main occupation is agriculture, you see that they were very much important basically in the rural areas. Now this dominance in a way has contributed to caste-like divisions in Sikhism. Okay, especially in the rural areas where agricultural livelihood is important, where agriculture is the main occupation. So in the rural areas, this predominance or this dominance of the Jats in the Sikh community have led to this kind of divisions. Now let's take a look at the non-Jats. So these are the ones where you have the former Brahmins, Kshatriyas and the Vaisyas from the caste system. So these, as we know, the Brahmins, Kshatriyas and the Vaisyas are the three highest caste in Hinduism, right? So Brahmins is the highest, then you have the Kshatriyas and the Vaisyas. Now, though they belong to the higher caste in the Hindu caste system, when it comes in Sikhism, they are in a way lower to the Jats. Okay, so the Jats are the dominant class, then you have the non-Jats. And therefore we see that this in a way reflects the fluidity that Sikhism introduced in the caste, in the traditional caste boundaries. So you see that though they belong to the top classes over there, in Sikhism they come below the Jats. Then next you have the Mazahabis. These are the converts from the untouchable caste, and these in a way occupy a complex position. So their role or their position in society is quite complicated in a way. Now they have a slightly high status compared to the untouchables in the caste system. Okay, compared to the Hindu society caste system, they have a slightly higher status. Okay, but we see that discrimination among them still persists. So we see that even though they have a little bit higher status than what untouchables would have in the Hindu caste system, here also they also face discrimination. And we see that this exists mainly in the rural areas. So it is said that despite the whole concept of equality that has been presented when it comes to learning or reading the scriptures or having the langar, etc., we see that these kind of divisions still are existing within the Sikh society. But we see that this is mainly with regards to the rural population. Okay, so it is said that when it comes to the urban and educated classes, these divisions are in a way eroding. In a way, they are slowly wearing off. These divisions are slowly wearing off in the urban and the educated society. So it is seen that in the cities you have educational opportunities as well as economic opportunities more equally for others, and therefore this three tiered structure is in a way breaking down with education and economic opportunities. And therefore, as people become aware of the whole concept of equality, community, and shared faith, we see that these modern values are helping the people to come out of these divisions or these restrictions in society. Now we see that in the rural areas, these social structures are still rigid. Okay, why? Because in the rural areas you still have the traditional form of livelihood. Okay, and therefore these structures tend to be rigid, and therefore these divisions continue to influence social relations. So this discrimination against the Mazahabis, okay, indicates that in spite of having significant social changes, okay, though you may make many efforts to introduce social changes, bring in equality, some things which are deeply ingrained takes time to, be wiped off. Okay, some marks which are still very deep, it will take some time for it to be completely eroded. Okay, so we see that it is still difficult in the rural areas to, in a way, reduce or erode this caste divisions. Now, let's take a look at the Guru and the disciple. So far, what do we learn about the importance of the Guru? So, why is the Guru important? One was guidance. Yes. To perform rituals, okay. Can you little bit elaborate on that? What you exactly mean? Okay, so what here we have to be a little bit specific, because as we have said, there is no kind of a person who is there to perform rituals or be in a way a kind of a bridge between the person and God. Now here when we speak about the gurus, we are in a way talking about whom? We are talking about the 10 human gurus and the Guru Granth Sahib or the Adi Granth, which is the eternal Guru. So one of the thing is guidance is one main thing. Any other thing we can come up? Okay, so helps in a way have a contact with God. Okay, anything else? Rule? Okay, in a way, yeah, that will norms will come in the guidance part of it. Okay, whereas spiritual or temporal guidance will come to that. That is within the community. We will come to the baptism. When we come to the rituals, we will look at that in little bit detail. Okay, so as of now, when we speak about the guru and the disciple, we see that this is in a way central to any spiritual journey. Okay, and it is important particularly with regards to having an experience of the divine, getting oneself liberated. Now, this guidance is considered as essential for liberation, okay, which is the release of from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, also called as samsara. So, now moksha in Sikhism is a kind of a realization of God, and in a way, it is the guru who provides the knowledge plus wisdom which is necessary for the disciple for spiritual liberation. So, as we said last time, the role of the guru is to provide the means, to show the way, and ultimately help the disciple or the individual to reach the goal of spiritual liberation. He also teaches how to lead righteous life that is anchored in the Sikh principles. He also teaches them the importance of meditation, on God's name, selfless service, and ethical living. So, in some religious traditions, we have seen that enlightenment comes solely through individual practices, right? In what we have seen, it mainly depends on the individual. Whereas in Sikhism, we see that there is it doesn't in a way say that enlightenment can come only through some solitary practices. That means going to a quiet place and by yourself doing certain things and then getting enlightened. In Sikhism, we see that the role of the Guru is important because the Guru is a guide. Okay, the one who shows the path, the one who leads a person to the truth and therefore helps to establish this connection with the divine. Okay, so this is a bit of a contrast that we have to the other traditions as well. Now, what is the status of the Guru? So, he is, it is said, slightly below God. So, we see that the Guru is not worshipped as a god. Okay, there is only reverence. He is revered as a true guide, one who helps to bring the individual closer to God. Now, the Guru is seen as somebody who is true, somebody who has divine wisdom, and therefore we see that the relationship of the Guru and disciple is one of respect and filled with devotion. That is, in a way, one is committed to what the Guru tells him because one is fully trusting the Guru, knowing that the Guru will lead him to liberation, the Guru will lead him to the truth. There is a complete surrender or complete trust in the Guru. Okay, so then in this way we see that the Guru serves as a intermediary. Here the Guru becomes a kind of a bridge between the disciple and helps him to understand God's presence. So it is just as a guide to understand or have an experience with God. Now, why do you think that this status is given to the Gurus? In the sense, they are not God, just little less than God. Why do you think, or what makes us, why can we say that they have this particular status? Okay, one is, in a way, they have maybe not liberation, let us say they have achieved a spiritual realization. Okay, it is like when you have learned a particular skill, only then can you teach it to others, right? It is only when you are perfect in something can you help others to do it. So, for example, when you learn to prepare a particular dish, only then can you teach it to somebody. Otherwise, what will happen is you also will be confused and the person who you are helping also will be lost. Okay, so in this way we see that they have achieved a level of spiritual realization and therefore through their works they have been able to help others to experience God. Which one? No, that is the Hindu this thing. Na? That is Sadguru. That's a different this thing. It is not the same as this. I cross-checked that. So now we see that the Guru is a kind of a spiritual teacher, and at the same time, through his teachings, the person also gets divine graces. And therefore, as we have already seen that God is formless, the Guru in a way tries to act as a bridge to close this gap by providing the disciple or the individual whatever tools are necessary or whatever is important to have a contact with God. And therefore, when we come to the primary function, as we have seen, the main principal function is to show the way to the truth and reality. So therefore, the Guru will teach that this material world is not permanent. And therefore, true reality lies in the divine. And as a result of these teachings, the individual will learn how to detach oneself from the worldly attachments, desires, ego, and thus will be able to focus on spiritual growth, and selfless service. And therefore, the Guru helps the disciple to also see the true purpose of life and also to merge this with the divine essence, okay, through devotion and righteous living. Now, the teachings of the Guru, where do we find the teachings of the Guru? In the Guru Granth Sahib or the Adi Granth. Now, these are a guide for the disciples. Okay, in a way, guiding the disciple to lead a life of humility, compassion, and truthfulness. Also, the Guru will help the disciple to overcome the 5 vices. Okay, that is lust, anger, greed, attachment, and ego. Okay, we see that all these lust, anger, greed, attachment, ego in a way block our spiritual progress, and therefore they help to cultivate. So the Guru will help the disciple to cultivate the values of love, contentment, and devotion to God. So then we have the gift of the divine word, which we'll take a look tomorrow. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. Tomorrow we'll take a look at this gift of the divine word, and we'll then move to the other ceremonies. Okay, so thank you.